a vast continent, stretching 1,000,000 miles, broke through the clouds and stood tall beneath the crimson sky. On this continent, situated in the heavens, a monumental battle was about to break out. At Lindong's request, Ling Qingzhu stepped back to a distance beyond the cloud continent. She could not interfere, as this was a massive test for Lindong and Xiao. They had to defeat all the powerful experts from the domain celestial court without using the power of the rules. Fortunately, Luo Li, in respect for these two predecessors, had ensured that her side would not use the power of the rules either. This would be a clash between primal spiritual energy and the force of heaven and earth. After Ling Qingzhu withdrew, tens of thousands of experts from the domain celestial court soared into the sky, surrounding Xiao and Lindong. Among them were more than 20 heavenly supreme experts, nearly 1,000 earth supremes, and several tens of thousands of supreme stage warriors. However, only the 20 or so heavenly supreme experts dared to approach Xiao and Lindong. The Earth Supreme and Supreme Stage Warriors formed battle formations at a safe distance from Xiao and Lindong. Each of them bore a battle intent sigil on their foreheads. As these sigils burst forth, they coalesced in the sky, forming two enormous battle intent arrays, each spanning several million miles. Each array was maintained by around 20,000 Supreme Stage Warriors and several hundred Earth Supremes, but the position of the Battle Array Masters remained vacant. These two massive battle formations were clearly not ordinary ones. After all, the Domain Celestial Court's experts knew they had to summon their greatest power to deal with Xiao and Lindong. Moreover, since Mu Qian, the ruler of the Domain Celestial Court, was one of the top 3 Battle Array Masters in the Domain world, these experts, who had joined the court, had all received training under him, making them capable of forming highly synchronized super battle arrays. However, at this moment, the 2 super battle arrays still lacked their commanders. Whoosh! With the sound of something tearing through the air, Ling Qingzhu, standing beyond the continent, saw a shadow dart out from behind Luo Li. It was a woman in black. As she extended her slender arms, a pair of massive wings, glowing with purple-black light, spread wide across the heavens and earth. Soon after, a colossal undying sacred bird, nearly 1,000,000 miles in size, appeared between the skies and the earth. The undying sacred bird's predecessor was the undying bird, and while the undying bird had the strength to contend with a heavenly supreme, the undying sacred bird possessed power surpassing even a typical perfected heavenly supreme. The undying venerable, originally a 9-nether soul sparrow that followed Mu Qian, had evolved with his growth. Under Mu Qian's guidance, she had successfully evolved into the first undying sacred bird in the domain world. It was said that during the world-ending war several years ago, the undying venerable had struck down a sacred emperor from an extraterritorial race with a single wing. Many speculated that if the undying sacred bird were to develop into a race of its own, it could rival the true dragon and phoenix as the 3rd greatest divine beast race in the domain world. The undying venerable, now in her true form, flapped her wings, ripping through space and appearing before one of the super battle arrays. At that moment, another shadow flew out from the domain celestial court. It was a young man, draped in white robes, with only his dark, youthful face exposed. His eyes, sharp and piercing, seemed to hold boundless battle will within them. This man was Qing Tiantang, a hidden battle array master and a strong expert Mu Qian had once befriended. Though his appearance was that of a youth, he had lived for over 10,000 years. In terms of battle will, he was on par with the Undying Lord, who had reached the pinnacle of battle intent mastery. When the Undying Venerable reached the super battle array, Qing Tiantang appeared before the other array. Both of them stood in the air, and as they entered the battle formations, 2 nexus runes appeared on their foreheads, like a third eye. These nexus runes were invented by Mu Qian and were known as the Battle Intent Eye. The appearance of the Battle Intent Eye was revolutionary for the entire Battle Array Master community. Previously, the position of Battle Array Master required exceptional talent. But with the Battle Intent Eye, the threshold for becoming a Battle Array Master was greatly lowered. As long as one had enough power and willpower, even someone without Battle Intent Mastery could wield the array's power directly. Of course, the The minimum requirement for using the battle intent I was being a perfected Earth Supreme. If a lower Heavenly Supreme once relied on battle formations to contend with an upper Heavenly Supreme, now, the same lower Heavenly Supreme can rival two upper Heavenly Supremes. As for the current situation, with two perfected Heavenly Supremes activating their Warwell eyes, the power they command has reached an incredibly terrifying level. When the Immortal Venerable and Qing Tian Tang activated their Warwell eyes, they each threw out a battle-intent celestial disc. At this moment, tens of thousands of strong warriors from the domain celestial court also entered the discs, for the upcoming battle would be incredibly fierce. Remaining outside would expose them to the risk of being killed by the shockwaves. Therefore, they had no choice but to seek refuge within the protective shield of the battle-intent celestial disc. Once all the domain celestial court's warriors were inside, they sat cross-legged within the discs, while an extremely solid light barrier appeared, protecting them all. At this time, only around 20 Heavenly Supreme experts remained outside. Soon, two terrifying battle-intent powers, capable of sending shivers down the spines of even the perfected Heavenly Supremes, descended upon the realm where the domain celestial court resided. Boom! The terrifying battle intent surpassed anything that any previous battle formation master could ever summon. Even the Holy Drum Heavenly Venerable from before would likely have been slightly weaker in comparison. As these two battle intent powers descended, Xiao Yin and Lin Dong, standing atop the domain celestial court, slowly raised their heads. Battle intent power, huh? Lin Dong muttered, his voice low. As a battle formation master himself, he understood this power better than anyone else. Immediately, he judged the terrifying level of these two powers. The battle formation controlled by Immortal Venerable alone wielded over 8 times the full power of a perfected Heavenly Supreme, while the one controlled by Qing Tian Tang, who was even more familiar with battle intent, had surpassed 9 times the power of a perfected Heavenly Supreme. Such power was once only possessed by great Tao Walkers, but now, thanks to the Warwell Eye invented by Mu Chun, even those who are not great Tao Walkers can wield such power. Everything in the world has changed now, even the rules, which no longer remain as rules. However, facing this kind of power, Xiao Yin and Lin Dong showed no fear. On the contrary, an excited smile appeared on their faces, and their blood began to boil. After all, if the domain celestial court didn't have such power, it would be impossible to stop them. Now, everything had become interesting. Hey, Brother Xiao Yin, I have a suggestion. Are you interested? Lin Dong asked with a faint smile as the two super battle formations powers descended. What suggestion? Xiao Yin asked. I'll take care of these two battle formations on my own. You go straight for their king, Lin Dong replied. Upon hearing this, Xiao Yin turned his gaze toward the highest point of the domain celestial court. There, a figure in a white gown sat casually on a seat. It was none other than the current central lord of the domain world, Luo Shen Luo Li. When Luo Li caught Xiao Yan's gaze, her expression remained calm, but she already knew Xiao Yin and Lin Dong's plan. She gently stroked her noticeably larger belly compared to a month ago, and then waved her slender hand toward the distant Immortal Venerable and Qing Tian Tang. Two seniors, I apologize for the offense. Please forgive me. As soon as Luo Li's voice faded, the two terrifying battle intent powers that had been enveloping the world began to stir. The first to act was the Immortal Venerable. Despite her lack of experience controlling battle formations, all the battle intent had been channeled through the Warwell Eye into her control. Much like her previous mastery over spiritual power, she directly launched an attack on Xiao Yin and Lin Dong, who were now surrounded. The Immortal Venerable raised a massive holy bird feather that spanned tens of thousands of feet and then crushed it down toward Xiao Yin and Lin Dong. The battle intent gathered in the form of a massive, pitch-black holy bird feather, which descended upon them, annihilating everything in its path. The holy bird feather, containing the power capable of shattering a supercontinent into pieces, crushed through the intangible space, its might so overwhelming that even a perfected Heavenly Supreme would not dare to resist it. As for Xiao Yin and Lin Dong, positioned beneath the holy bird feather, the Immortal Venerable dared not even look at them, nor did she believe that this strike could harm the two of them. The immortal venerable's only intent with this attack was to test just how powerful these two rulers, who had been stripped of their rule power, still were. Good proposal. Looking up at the descending holy bird feather, Xiao Yin nodded. Lin Dong, standing nearby, slowly curved a smile at the corner of his mouth. Now that the plan was in place, it was time to execute it. Lin Dong took a step forward, and with that single stride, it felt as though a giant, capable of shaking the very heavens and earth, had stepped into the world. The entire domain continent trembled. But what drew more attention was the dark crimson hue that began to spread, gradually covering the heavens and earth of the domain continent. As this color spread, boundless world war will surged from all directions, converging on Lin Dong. The strength of this power far surpassed that which even a perfected heavenly supreme could endure. This was the power of world war will at 10 times the level of a perfected heavenly supreme. Boom. As Lin Dong summoned and controlled this immense world war will power, it crushed through all obstacles in its path, including the holy bird feather unleashed by the immortal venerable. What a terrifying power. No wonder he's regarded as the #1 in battle will power. Qing Tiantang muttered under his breath from another location. The immortal venerable's gaze became serious. Lin Dong's strength exceeded even their expectations. Could it really be as the legends say? Martial ancestor Lin Dong. His battle will was unbeatable. Boom. At the same time Lin Dong deflected the immortal venerable's battle will. A dazzling blaze erupted beside him. In that instant, a firestorm consumed an area of tens of thousands of miles around Lin Dong and Xiao Yin. As this firestorm parted in the center, a grand avenue appeared, and the Emperor of 10,000 Flames finally made his move. Xiao Yin moved through the firestorm without hindrance, locking onto Luo Li high above in the domain celestial court. But just as he entered the vast range surrounding Luo Li, a figure appeared from the space before him, blocking his path. Who are you? Xiao Yin halted upon seeing the figure that appeared in front of him. The figure spoke. Uncle Yin, I'm the one walking behind you. Hearing this, Xiao Yin finally understood. This person daring to intercept him head-on was a great Dao walker. Standing before Xiao Yin was a young man, dressed in a long, thin white robe, with a book and a black jade hanging from his waist. He looked to be around 16 or 17 years old. However, when Xiao Yin looked at him, his brow furrowed. According to common sense, Xiao Yin certainly wouldn't think this youth was truly only 16 or 17 years old. After all, for those with enough strength, altering their appearance and age was an easy task. Yet for some reason, Xiao Yin had the distinct feeling that this youth really was just 16 or 17. Who exactly is he? What's your name? After hearing the youth refer to him as Uncle Yin, Xiao Yin grew even more suspicious and asked, My name is Su Bo, Uncle Yin. The youth smiled slightly and addressed Xiao Yin. You're not from the domain celestial court. Xiao Yin's gaze sharpened. Su Bo nodded. I don't belong to any faction. I prefer to live freely. I just happen to be here at the domain celestial court. Then why are you stopping me? Xiao Yin asked, clearly irritated. He didn't have time to deal with some unknown person. I promised Mu Chen I'd stay here for a year, so of course, I have to stop you for the domain celestial court, Su Bo replied. Stop me? Do you think you can? Xiao Yin sneered coldly. I calculated it just now. The chance of me stopping you, Uncle Yin, is only 5%, Su Bo said. Upon hearing this, Xiao Yan's interest was piqued. He couldn't help but find the youth, named Su Bo, quite strange. He had no idea if the boy was simply too naive or had some other method. But Su Bo had come out to stop him even knowing that it was nearly impossible. However, although I only have a 5% chance of stopping Uncle Xiao Yin, if it were to be within 3 minutes, the chance would rise to over 80%, Su Bo said. Oh, 80%? You're that confident? Xiao Yin replied with a faint smile. If Su Bo really had the confidence to block him for 3 minutes, then Su Bo must have already walked 90% of the Great Path. Otherwise, it would be impossible to have the strength to temporarily stop Xiao Yin. However, if Uncle Xiao Yin can answer a few of my questions, then I won't stop you anymore, Su Bo said. What questions? Xiao Yin asked. As soon as he finished speaking, Su Bo had already taken out a notebook from his waist. He tore off a page, held it up with spiritual power, and sent it into Xiao Yan's hands. Xiao Yan took the page and glanced at it. But as soon as he saw the content, his brows furrowed. His expression towards Su Bo became a bit surprised, though he quickly hid it. He tore the page into pieces and said, "Sorry, I don't know the answer." "Ah, in this vast world, is there no one who can surpass 90? Su Bo sighed helplessly as he spoke. As his words fell, a breath connecting him and the entire realm began to envelop the domain's celestial court. "Since Uncle Xiao Yan cannot answer my questions, I'll have to stop you for a bit. Just 2 minutes." Su Bo's voice echoed. He immediately unleashed the power of a great Tao Walker. Under his control, the space within a radius of several thousand meters around him and Xiao Yan began to distort. The peculiarity of the change shocked even the heavenly supreme experts with profound space control. Xiao Yan and Su Bo's figures continuously shrank within that space, until, within the vast and special space of several thousand meters, their figures were no bigger than a sesame seed. To the distant experts, it seemed as though the two had evaporated into thin air. Up in the domain celestial court, Luo Li smiled faintly. Su Bo's strength was not weaker than the immortal venerable, who mastered battle intent power. She wondered if he could truly stop Xiao Yan, the emperor of 10,000 flames. At this moment, within the altered space, where no one could see, Xiao Yan and Su Bo stood facing each other. Xiao Yan surveyed the surrounding world and quickly deduced the Tao that Su Bo walked. "So this is the so-called Space Great Path?" Xiao Yan muttered. As far as he knew, the upper spirit king from the ancient times of the Great Thousand World also walked this path, and Lindong had dabbled in it as well. However, Xiao Yan had never heard of anyone using the Space Great Path in such a way. At this point, not far from Xiao Yan, after shrinking him with the spatial ability, Su Bo slapped his hand toward Xiao Yan. When the slap landed, it didn't explode with tremendous force or tear the space. But in that instant, Xiao Yan felt a pressure several times stronger than a perfected heavenly supreme fall upon his chest. In the blink of an eye, the force spread throughout his entire body. Boom! Xiao Yan's body exploded into a blood mist in an instant. However, no one could see this scene outside, as Xiao Yan had already become so minuscule. The blood mist was also nearly invisible. After turning Xiao Yan into a blood mist with a single slap, Su Bo suddenly sensed a terrifying danger. His figure quickly retreated, though from a macro perspective, he had only moved less than a foot. Yet, Su Bo had still been slow for a brief moment. The hand he had just struck with gradually transformed into brilliant flames, flames that could not be extinguished. They spread at an incredible speed across Su Bo's entire body. Soon, when the flames engulfed him completely, the terrifying heat evaporated him. At the same time, the blood mist on the opposite side began to burn. Finally, Xiao Yan, completely unharmed, emerged from the flames. But Xiao Yan knew that Su Bo had not yet fallen. In front of him, the space twisted, forming a wave that enveloped the flames in the area. After the twisted space settled, all the flames were extinguished. "Uncle Xiao Yan, this space is my domain. In here, I won't die." Su Bo's calm voice reached Xiao Yan's ears. Though Su Bo had not shown himself, he said, "And I've already blocked you for half a minute. You really have some skill. If you're really only 16 or 17, then I guess you haven't cultivated spiritual power, have you?" Xiao Yan said, addressing the surrounding space. "From the very beginning, you've been walking the great Tao. So what is Uncle Xiao Yan going to do next?" Su Bo's voice came again. "You're asking me what I'll do. Heh." Xiao Yan gave a faint smile. He knew that if he continued to act like he had just done, directly defeating Su Bo would be very difficult, because now, the entire compressed space area was under his control. Unless, he did it that way. At the same time, while Xiao Yan was trapped by Su Bo in the strange spatial zone, Lindong was also using his world battle willpower to clash with the immortal venerable and Qing Tiantang. Their battlefield had expanded beyond the domain's celestial court continent. In the boundless clouds above, the aftershocks from their battle were tearing apart the cloud layers for millions of miles around. Under the dark red sky, the immortal venerable continuously launched the holy bird feathers formed from condensed battle will, while Qing Tiantang shaped the terrifying battle will into a massive azure bamboo pole, repeatedly slamming it towards Lin Dong. But no matter how hard the immortal venerable and Qing Tiantang attacked, Lin Dong stood firm, not allowing them to advance a single step. Although their combined battle will was stronger than Lin Dong's, his battle will seemed inexhaustible, never depleting or weakening no matter how much it was consumed. Is this the world battle will Dao? It's even more terrifying than the rumors said. After realizing that even with Qing Tiantang's help, they couldn't do anything to Lin Dong, the immortal venerable couldn't believe it. No wonder Lin Dong was called the true number one in battle will power. Even Mu Chan didn't dare to surpass him in this regard. However, as long as they could hold Lin Dong back, their mission would have been accomplished. In the strange spatial zone, which was several thousand feet in diameter and floating in the sky above the domain celestial court, one area appeared calm, seemingly empty. Yet no one dared to step into this space, for the two individuals inside were terrifying presences. Since Xiao Yin was dragged into this space by Su Bo, over 2 minutes had passed. During this time, due to Lin Dong's delay, the immortal venerable and Qing Tiantang had been pushed far away from the domain celestial court continent. Though occasional aftershocks from their battle swept across the distant skies, the domain celestial court had mostly regained peace. However, this tranquility couldn't last for long. After Su Bo had kept Xiao Yin occupied for nearly 3 minutes, more than 20 heavenly supreme experts guarding the domain celestial court saw a small heat scar appear in the strange space above. The heat scar, once it appeared, began to expand slowly at a visible pace. Within seconds, it grew to about 10 meters wide. Although it only expanded 10 meters, it was actually a compressed space, meaning that when restored, it would be at least 10,000 times larger. The terrifying heat contained in that small space was unimaginable to the surrounding heavenly supreme experts, but they all understood that Su Bo had likely reached his limit, and Xiao Yin had finally broken through his hold. Boom! At that moment, all the heavenly supreme experts of the domain celestial court activated their full power. If Xiao Yin could break through Su Bo's line of defense, they would attack with everything they had. Crash! As all the experts outside prepared to launch their interception, the heat scar in the strange spatial zone had expanded again, now reaching 100 meters wide. The heat was so intense that everything it touched had been burned into a pitch-black void. When the scorched area expanded to 1,000 meters, the strange space could no longer bear the heat and collapsed like loosened soil. As everyone expected, a figure in a black robe emerged from the collapsing strange space. It was Xiao Yin, unharmed. After reappearing, he surveyed the surrounding world. This was once Su Bo's controlled space, where all the spatial elements were under his dominion. Defeating Su Bo directly within this range was obviously extremely difficult. But Xiao Yin chose a different approach. He would destroy the entire space. When Xiao Yin appeared, the collapse of the strange spatial zone caused the previously compressed space to rebound immediately. In that instant, the vast sea of flames that had originally stretched for 1,000 zhong enveloped the entire domain celestial court continent. However, what left all the domain celestial court experts and Luo Li stunned was that Su Bo's figure had not appeared. Just as everyone was puzzled about where Su Bo had gone, Luo Li, positioned above the domain celestial court, noticed that Xiao Yin seemed to be holding something. It was a white jade bottle. Is that the stagnant heaven bottle? Upon seeing the white jade bottle in Xiao Yan's hand, Luo Li immediately understood where Su Bo had disappeared to. However, what confused her was that the stagnant heaven bottle had always been in the hands of the Qingyin divine court of the Futu divine clan, yet now it had fallen into Xiao Yan's possession. When had Xiao Yan obtained the stagnant heaven bottle? Why are you all still standing there? Attack together! As the heavenly supreme experts stood dumbfounded, Luo Li's sharp voice rang out across the heavens. Everyone quickly regained their senses and, as per their previous plan, unleashed a ferocious assault on Xiao Yin. Though Su Bo had not appeared, this also alleviated their concerns. Boom, boom, boom. Over 20 heavenly supreme experts attacked from all directions with terrifying power. However, none of these heavenly supremes had reached the level of perfected heavenly supreme. So faced with such an onslaught, Xiao Yin didn't even bother to look. "This power is not enough to stop me," Xiao Yin murmured softly. With a wave of his hand, the sea of flames surged and transformed into massive flame tornadoes, roaring towards the over 20 heavenly supreme experts. These experts, once rulers of vast realms, were now effortlessly trapped by Xiao Yin. At this moment, they had no ability to retaliate against him, retreating step by step. Fortunately, Xiao Yin had no intention of taking their lives, so he merely used a portion of the flame of fire power to delay them. After effortlessly restraining the 20-plus heavenly supreme experts, Xiao Yin turned his gaze toward the distant horizon. There, Lin Dong still kept the immortal venerable and Qing Tiantang at bay. Xiao Yin then shifted his focus to Luo Li at the very top of the domain celestial court. "Luo Li, your domain celestial court experts can no longer stop me. Can I meet the acolyte now?" Xiao Yin asked. Upon hearing this, Luo Li bit her silver teeth. Though she knew that Xiao Yin and Lin Dong were peak experts comparable to Mu Chun, she had still underestimated the combat strength they could unleash after losing their rule power. At least, she hadn't expected that Lin Dong alone could hold back both the immortal venerable and Qing Tiantang, who wielded battle will. And on Xiao Yan's side, Su Bo had only managed to delay Xiao Yin for 3 minutes. "There's no choice but to let him act," Luo Li muttered inwardly. She had originally planned to intervene herself, but considering her physical condition, she couldn't afford to use any power that might strain her body, except for the central hub's power, unless absolutely necessary. At this moment, Xiao Yan's gaze swept over the domain celestial court. Since he was no longer hindered by its experts, it was time to locate the acolyte's sealed land. However, when his gaze passed over the giant hall behind Luo Li, he froze slightly. A familiar figure was slowly walking out from there. It was none other than the fourth ancestor of the extraterritorial evil clan, the malevolent ancestor, Li Ling. Li Ling's appearance clearly caught Xiao Yin off guard. He had always believed that Li Ling had left the domain world with Mu Chun. Given that Li Ling had once destroyed the Great Thousand World, the extraterritorial world, and the lower dimensional worlds, Xiao Yin considered him far more dangerous than the previous 3 extraterritorial ancestors. In fact, the current domain world had been created entirely by Li Ling. "You're still in the domain world. This really surprises me," Xiao Yin said with a deep voice, staring at Li Ling as he stepped out of the hall. By now, Li Ling had walked to stand behind Luo Li and, looking at Xiao Yin, he said to her, "I can't defeat him. But you still have to stop him. Don't forget what Mu Chun told us before he left," Luo Li replied. "And now, you're on equal footing." "What do you mean?" Li Ling asked. "Your rule power was stripped by Mu Chun, while the Flame Emperor's rule power is in my hands," Luo Li explained. Upon hearing this, Li Ling once again glanced at Luo Li and Xiao Yin. Then, he smiled. "No, he is just an invader from the domain celestial court now," Luo Li said. "Are you sure?" Malice Spirit asked again. Luo Li narrowed her beautiful eyes slightly, but did not respond. "I understand. I'll go then," Malice Spirit said as he noticed Luo Li's silence. Without hesitation, he appeared in front of Xiao Yin, and the two confronted each other in mid-air. "Hello, we meet again," Malice Spirit said indifferently after appearing before Xiao Yin. His polite attitude caused Xiao Yan's expression to twitch slightly. Xiao Yin hadn't forgotten that during the domain guard plan he initiated 5 years ago, this plan, one that could have destroyed the entire extraterritorial evil clan, went unnoticed by everyone, except for Malice Spirit. Not only that, it was Malice Spirit's reckless actions that led to the complete destruction of the Great Thousand World, the extraterritorial worlds, and the lower dimensional worlds. "Do you think you can stop me?" Xiao Yin said to Malice Spirit. "Let's find out. But I can't guarantee the outcome," Malice Spirit replied. "Can't guarantee the outcome, huh? Well, some accounts need to be settled," Xiao Yin muttered, and a terrifying killing intent began to spread from his eyes. Earlier, at the edge of the domain world, he had refrained from attacking Malice Spirit for the greater good, but now, since Malice Spirit hadn't followed Mu Chun out of the domain world. It seemed like he was waiting to die. Boom. As the killing intent in Xiao Yan's eyes grew stronger, the more than 20 heavenly supreme experts who were ensnared by the flame tornado and unable to break free noticed the fire that had been trapping them receding. The flames gathered toward Xiao Yan at the center of the domain celestial court. Seeing this, the heavenly supreme experts quickly retreated. They knew that the Emperor of 10,000 Flames was about to truly show his power, and the earlier playful skirmish was over. From now on, they could no longer participate in this battle. Boom. The sky was filled with raging flames that covered the entire domain celestial court. Everywhere, except for the large hall where Luoli was consumed by the endless sea of fire. The scene was one of utter devastation, a true inferno scorching the heavens and earth. Just as Xiao Yan was about to make his move, Luoli clenched her jade-like hand. She seemed to be hesitating. At the same time, on a cloud not far from the domain celestial court's continent, Ling Qingzhu was watching every move Luoli made. Is she finally unable to hold back? Luoli? If a ranking were made of all the destroyers in the history of the domain world, Xiao Yan would place Malice Spirit at the top. Over the past tens of thousands of years, countless destroyers had appeared in the domain world. During the world-ending war, for instance, the extraterritorial evil clan sent over 10,000 branches to the lower dimensional worlds. These branches had the power to destroy a lower dimension. Any lower dimension they discovered would undoubtedly turn into a mountain of corpses and sea of blood, with the heavens and earth turned pitch black. However, in the grand scheme of things, the destructive power of these evil clan branches was insignificant. The number of lower dimensions was too vast, and after thousands of years, the extraterritorial evil clan had only conquered about half of them. The rate of destruction was far too slow. Faster than the evil clan branches were the many extraterritorial heavenly emperors who possessed the power to obliterate a lower dimension in a single strike. In terms of destruction, they far surpassed the usual evil clan branches. In recorded events alone, the extraterritorial heavenly emperors had destroyed several supercontinents in the Great Thousand World and wiped out several superdimensions in the lower dimensional worlds. While it might take the evil clan branches hundreds or even thousands of years to conquer a lower dimension, the heavenly emperors could crush a supercontinent and erase a super lower dimension in the blink of an eye. But compared to the destruction caused by Malice Spirit, the branches of the evil clan and the heavenly emperors were completely insignificant. This individual had reduced all the lower dimensions to rubble within an extremely short time, then expanded his destruction to the Great Thousand World and even the extraterritorial worlds. The devastation caused by Malice Spirit several years ago was so terrifying that it wiped out everyone below the heavenly supreme level in the domain world. In that catastrophe, only 100 people survived. Without a doubt, Malice Spirit was the greatest butcher and destroyer the domain world had ever seen. "Please instruct me," Malice Spirit said after receiving his mission from Luoli, ready to face Xiao Yan at any moment. "No one can protect you now." Xiao Yan spoke coldly to the Malice Spirit. As his words fell, the entire sky above the domain celestial court suddenly collapsed. A deluge of heavenly fire, like a waterfall, surged down at the Malice Spirit. Is this the true power of the Flame Emperor? Retreat quickly. As Xiao Yan unleashed the Skyfire Cascade upon the Malice Spirit, the heavenly supreme experts nearby sensed the terrifying power of this attack. They had no doubt that this Skyfire Cascade could level the entire domain celestial court continent. If they tried to block it, it would be like a mantis trying to stop a chariot. The only choice was to retreat immediately from the continent. "Everyone, you are all heavenly supremes of the domain celestial court. When you joined, you swore an oath of loyalty unto death. Are you now ready to cast those oaths aside?" Just as the experts prepared to retreat, a stern voice echoed from the main hall of the domain celestial court. It was Luoshin Luoli's voice. Hearing her, the experts who had been ready to flee gritted their teeth and turned back, begrudgingly launching a fierce assault on Xiao Yan from all directions. Boom! The domain celestial court, which had just settled, began to tremble again. A massive wave of terrifying attacks roared toward Xiao, who was still locked in battle with the malice spirit. Seeing this, Xiaoyan's eyes narrowed slightly. He regretted not having directly obliterated these troublesome pests earlier. Although annoyed by the incoming attacks, Xiao couldn't ignore them. He flicked his sleeve, sending a ring-shaped fire wave sweeping outward from his center. It clashed violently with the incoming onslaught. Meanwhile, the malice spirit, facing the skyfire cascade, began its own counterattack. The malice spirit hovered in the air, crossing its legs in meditation, and conjured a black halo around itself. The halo rapidly expanded, and within moments, it covered hundreds of thousands of miles, enveloping both Xiao and the surrounding experts of the domain celestial court. Xiao didn't know exactly what the malice spirit was planning, but he knew he couldn't let it proceed unchecked. Then something strange occurred. The black halo began to transform. The flat space inside the halo started to shift in light, and soon the entire black halo turned into a massive, smooth mirror. Through this giant mirror, the heavenly fire cascade above was reflected, appearing as two fire dragons approaching each other. What is this? A mirror? Could it be a world artifact? As the giant mirror formed, some experts were at a loss. After all, this was something conjured by the malice spirit, the fourth ancestor of the extraterritorial evil clan. Although the malice spirit no longer wielded rule power, it had been a terrifying force before it ascended to the ruler level. I'll see how you plan to resist this attack. Xiaoyan's eyes narrowed. He wasn't as surprised as the others. Having fought Subo before, he knew that every great Dao Walker had their own unique abilities. Lin Dong had once been the greatest wielder of the will of heaven and earth, capable of manipulating all battle will. The ancestor of 10,000 spirits embodied the extreme of life force. And Subo had reached the peak of the space Dao, enabling him to create such a compressed space. And now, the malice spirit, as a great Dao Walker, had clearly transformed the mirror not into a world artifact, but into the manifestation of the Dao it walked. If this is the Dao you walk, then I'll burn it to the ground for you. As Xiaoyan's words dropped, the skyfire cascade above accelerated its descent. The malice spirit, however, merely smiled at the coming firestorm, raised his head, and with a swift motion, dove into the massive mirror, slipping inside like a fish. You think this will let you escape my flames? Xiaoyan muttered. But before he could finish, he witnessed something unexpected. The malice spirit, having entered the mirror, waved his hand. The smooth surface of the mirror shimmered, and the fire cascade that had once been reflected in the mirror suddenly shifted, shooting out of the mirror and clashing with another firestorm high in the sky. When two flame cascades, each containing the power to destroy the heavens and the earth, collided with each other, they mutually annihilated one another. At that moment, Xiao was filled with disbelief. He had never expected that the malice spirit could replicate his power entirely through a mirror. The malice spirit, trapped within the mirror, wasn't surprised at the replication of Xiaoyan's power. This was simply a special ability granted to him by the Dao he walked, the Shadow Void Dao, which allowed him to materialize the illusory images of anything in this world, including attribute-based powers. Each lower dimension could correspond to a continent within the Great Thousand Worlds, and it was the function of this Dao that facilitated the merging of dimensions. How's my replica? Not bad, right? The malice spirit, within the mirror, gazed at Xiao outside and smiled faintly. A replica? Xiao muttered under his breath. Then, with a flick of his hand, he transformed the power of fire in the heavens and earth into countless massive flame swords. Each of these swords carried enough power to make even a heavenly supreme expert's scalp tingle, and their numbers were in the thousands. Since the malice spirit's Dao could grant him the power to replicate anything, Xiao was curious to see if this mirror could replicate such a vast quantity of attacks. I see. As Xiao unleashed the attack of over 10,000 flame swords, the malice spirit in the mirror sneered once more. He waved his hands, and all the flame swords reflected by the mirror shot out, colliding head-on with the flame swords Xiao had launched. Then, every single one of the flame swords exploded. The giant mirror now sparkled with over 10,000 brilliant sparks. However, Xiao Yan didn't seem at all surprised that his attack had been blocked. Instead, he coldly smiled because, as all the flame swords were destroyed by the replicas, the destructive aftermath of the explosions began to spread wildly. These aftershocks were formed from distorted space and were formless, carrying no color. It was these invisible shockwaves that Xiao Yan's true purpose lay in. Since the fiery, colored objects would inevitably be blocked by the mirror, how would the formless, colorless forces fare? However, when the destructive aftershock struck the mirror, Xiao Yan froze in surprise. He saw that all the invisible shockwaves passed straight through the mirror the malice spirit had created and reached the domain's celestial court beneath it, tearing the entire land apart and creating massive rifts. The only thing unaffected was the mirror itself and the malice spirit within. It's actually an illusory entity. Staring at the mirror, which remained intact, Xiao Yan quickly realized that the mirror the malice spirit had created wasn't a physical object, but an image. Something that couldn't be directly interacted with. Boom, boom, boom. As Xiao Yan's attacks on the malice spirit proved ineffective, over 20 heavenly supreme experts in the distance launched another torrential barrage of attacks on him. Looking at the constant onslaught, Xiao Yan had no choice but to divert his attention to defending against these attacks. At the same time, he continued to strike at the illusory mirror from all directions, trying to find a way to deal with the malice spirit within. Boom, boom, boom. The battle between Xiao Yan and the malice spirit through the mirror was incredibly intense, and every time Xiao Yan attacked, he would quickly switch tactics after confirming that the previous approach was ineffective. After dozens of large-scale attacks, Xiao Yan's gaze grew truly solemn. He still couldn't truly attack the malice spirit in the mirror. Although, thanks to the heavenly Tao, he had an endless supply of flame power, the malice spirit, protected by the mirror, had already reached an undefeatable position. If this continued, it would become an endless war of attrition. Meanwhile, far beyond the domain's celestial court continent, in a distant sea area, countless towering waves were crashing with terrifying force. The entire world was now enveloped in an immense battle will, and the two sides clashing were Lin Dong and the Undying Venerable, along with Qing Tiantang, commanding a super battle array. Minutes had passed since the battle began, and because of the devastation caused by these three powers, several continents around the domain's celestial court had been flattened. However, the ones gradually falling into the disadvantage were the Undying Venerable and Qing Tiantang's side. Has something gone wrong? While holding off the Undying Venerable and the others, Lin Dong's gaze shifted toward the domain's celestial court in the distance. It seems that the domain's celestial court has used up all of its hidden tricks. Such a dignified martial ancestor, it's not good to be distracted when fighting. Just as Lin Dong was distracted by the battle situation at the domain's celestial court, the Immortal Venerable and Qing Tiantang immediately seized the opening. They unleashed all of their battle will power, which quickly enveloped the martial ancestor. Lin Dong immediately snapped back to his senses, and with a swipe of his hand, his own battle will surged wildly. However, this time, his attack was still a fraction slower than the Immortal Venerable's. The Immortal Venerable knew this was the only chance to turn the tide of battle and suppress Lin Dong. But just then, two attacks from the distant horizon collided directly with the battle will strikes of the Immortal Venerable and Qing Tiantang. Though these two attacks lacked the strength of battle will, they perfectly struck the core of the oncoming force, triggering an explosion. Boom, boom. The explosive clash of battle will forces sent both Lin Dong and the Immortal Venerable staggering back. In that instant, they both realized that someone else had intervened. Who is it? The Immortal Venerable turned his gaze toward the source of the attack. At that moment, two figures rapidly approached from the distant horizon, reaching the sea region just in time. But when Lin Dong saw their faces, he was momentarily stunned. At the same time, at the domain celestial court, Xiao Yan and the malice spirit were still locked in battle. However, Xiao Yan was clearly at a disadvantage, as he not only had to face the malice spirit's attacks, but also had to split his attention between the more than 20 heavenly supremes who had retreated to hundreds of thousands of feet away. They knew they couldn't get close to Xiao Yan, as he could easily swat them away with a single strike. So, they opted for ranged attacks, trying to disrupt Xiao Yin from afar. Meanwhile, Luo Li, outside the main hall of the Domain Celestial Court, was quite pleased with the role the Malice Spirit had played. Looking at Xiao Yin, her voice rang out, "Flame Emperor, based on the current situation, it's clear you cannot defeat the forces of the Domain Celestial Court. In my opinion, you should withdraw and leave the Domain Celestial Court. Luo Li won't make things difficult for you." As soon as Luo Li's words echoed, all the Domain Celestial Court experts intensified their efforts to constrain Xiao Yin. If this continued, they might just be able to force the Emperor of 10,000 Flames to retreat. Upon hearing Luo Li, Xiao Yan's eyes narrowed. He immediately withdrew all of his flame power. In that moment, all the Domain Celestial Court experts stopped their attacks, breathing a collective sigh of relief. It seemed the Emperor of 10,000 Flames was finally about to stop. However, just as everyone thought Xiao Yin would retreat, his palm turned, and a white jade bottle appeared in a flash. It was the stagnant heaven bottle,